Awesome. Thank you, Thomas, very much. And also from my side, a warm welcome to all of you attending this virtual event. As Thomas already introduced, I'm responsible for the market advisory arm of Frenus, and I can say that me as well as the whole team are really looking forward to this event and the opportunity to gain really exciting insights. On the one hand, during the presentations from industry-leading experts and decision makers, but on the other hand, especially to get the opportunity to have an exchange with you. Either between the sessions or at our networking slots. We love to see the option for collaboration with this type of event, and we are really looking forward to connect and see this as a main added value for our event. In this context, let me give you also a big applause for our organization team. I think it's a tremendous job in setting up such type of event in such a short amount of time and in such high quality when you look at the speaker channel, the platform, everything, so chapeau here. In today's presentation from my side, I and this team would like to share some insights with you on the value creation process on connected vehicle data. We want to focus here on one hand on the market development, overall market and use case driven market on the one hand, and on the other hand present you different types of business models. On the one hand from a data value chain perspective, on the other hand by putting database services in context of value add levels, channel types and data sources. So let's dive in, and as usual, let's start with the definition. Let's start with the definition of connected vehicles. We usually go here with the IEEE Vehicle Technology Society definition, which defines connected vehicle as the different communication devices present in the vehicle that enable in-car connectivity with other devices either present in the vehicle or connection of the vehicle to devices, networks, and applications and services in an external environment. When we have a look at data created in the vehicle versus amount of data exchanged between vehicles and its environment, we see that this share as of today is still rather small. In 2019, in average for specific type of passenger cars, it was only 50 megabytes of data which has been shared within an environment. But with advancements in technological and connectivity infrastructure, we see here a growing number of external data use cases. We try to visualize them here on this one pot, but we see that the amount of data is expected to see really an exponential growth. And this exponential growth from currently 50 megabytes of data exchange between the vehicle environment and the connected car, which will see an amount of data exchange of 8 gigabytes, is mainly driven by a growing number of external data consumers, which are looking forward to make use of vehicle data for various use cases and services. So as I said, in 2023, the vehicle exchange of data is already forecasted to amount for around 8 gigabytes as vehicle gets further connected with its environment and devices, infrastructure, and other vehicles within the environment. When we reach the stage of fully autonomous vehicles, our cars will create up to 10 terabytes of data per day, a tremendous amount, also strongly driven, for example, by video sensor data processing, and will exchange a share of around 16 gigabytes of data on a daily basis, which means a lot of information, a lot of different types of data, in-car generated data on different aggregation levels will be exchanged and shared and be available for different models. So we basically see here an explosion of different data types in car generated and exchanged data. The smart aggregation, analysis, and contextualization of this data will then enable successful data-driven service and business models, and only them. Now, let's have a look at the midterm potential of connected vehicle services. And we see the growing amount of generated and exchanged data and its role as a key enabler for completely new business models and services. Let already many players think of data as becoming the new oil, a resource which with proper aggregation can be made into a valuable adding value business model. When we look at the current automotive revenue split as of today, we see that vehicle sales, aftermarket, and financial services are key revenue contributors, whereas car data enabled smart services have a comparably minor share, but already generating revenues of around $50 billion on a global scale. But if you look at the growth rate, we see the potential around car data enabled smart services. As it is forecasted by 2030, though, that these services are estimated to become close to a $400 billion market globally. It obviously has to be said that the values presented here present represent post-corona predictions and indications. So growth of various segments and the overall market is and has been and already will be further impacted by what we're going through right now. But from our opinion, and I think this opinion is commonly shared on the market, it won't change the general trend. Car data related services are representing a large and highly potential growing business opportunity, not only for established automotive player, but a variety of market players. And we will see in the following that it's not just the traditional automotive companies who are active and trying to monetizing on this new business market, but there are a number of players among the whole value chain trying to monetize with their business model among the value adding processes of data. When we look at the next slide, we see many different kind of players are active in a data value process. We have high-tech and technology companies, we have infrastructure and connectivity provider, we have telco companies, we have traditional automotive OEM and suppliers, we have ICT service providers, we have developers, to just name a few. So we'll have a big, diverse number of different players who will all play in their working together ecosystem and a critical role in order to really enable successful monetization of business models and the provision of value-adding services. And each of these players tries to monetize among their focusing data value chain step. Here you can see a car-generated data value chain, which is based on the FKA and strategy engineers value chain. And this value chain describes the different steps from data creation and onboard processing to transmission, offboard processing and storage, to sharing and data accessing, service development, service platform, and service use. Based on these different steps, 8 general business model archetypes for data monetization can be distinguished. And these 8 models can then be further distinguished and clustered into 3 different roles, which are played among the data value chain. Let me give you an insight here of these different roles. First role with the color gray being the data providers. Data providers involve players involved in data generation and onboard processing, typically OEMs and tier 1 suppliers, as well as data access platform providers, which offer marketplaces to provide the third group data users with access to generated and transmitted and processed data. In our event, we have a variety of representatives for especially this value chain step here, which I consider as being a key one and a very, very interesting one. Also, when trying to find out and deriving what type of data has what type of value, we will come to that a bit later. We have several representatives here. We have OBI Plus, we have Greenwood, we have Caruso, we have Automotive here. So really looking forward here also for some input, especially on this value chain step. The second group can be categorized as intermediaries. They are responsible on the one hand from the data transmission of data from vehicle to a central processing or storage location, normally done by telco operators like Deutsche Telekom or Vodafone, as well as the overall arching data collection, storage, and access provision. This, by example, via a tremendous server infrastructure. Typical players here active are, for example, AWS, Microsoft Azure, IBM. Last but not least, we also have payment intermediaries responsible for the payment process, for example, in vehicle for end user consumption and payment of services. The last group is the group actually working with the data to finally provide end user business services. The data users, the ones developing the actual database end user service, which are adding value of data via data analysis, contextualization, and adding of additional data and information. These include the roles of data analyst, service developer on the one hand, and service provider on the other hand. Service provider acting here as a touch point between the end user and the vehicle. So we see different players with different ways of monetizing, as each of the 8 business models here presents there a one specific archetype option to monetize among the database value chain. And we see the journey from data creation to a final database use services, which can be used by an end user. In the next step, we looked at business models from a different perspective and have a great but quite a complex slide in order for a 20-minute presentation. We nevertheless wanted to show you it as it contains some very interesting insights. We already have simplified it a bit. Feel free to join for a more detailed description, also our Q&A session afterwards, where my colleague, Ms. Marinova, who also played a tremendous role for the whole presentation. Creighton will join me. We're really looking forward here also to provide you some more in-depth information. Beforehand, we looked at different value business models based on a value chain perspective. Now we try to go one level deeper and derive data business models based on type of data aggregation, data source, and a sales channel-based perspective. So these are the three dimensions which have been differentiated here on the slide. The data source, which is either car data, personal data, or ecosystem data. You could add additional complexity here by further clustering by proprietary versus open data and live versus historical data. The second level being the value add, be it a pure generation versus a processing versus an in-depth analysis versus an even outcome/prediction-based model. And the last one being the channel, meaning buyers matching clients, either a one-to-one model, a one-to-many, or a many-to-many model. Based on these different dimensions in the matrix models, these three dimensions explained, three general business models regarding data services can actually be differentiated and derived. The first one is data harvesting, which applies in the area of data generation and mainly focuses on in-car related data, with typical sources being, for example, CAN bus, sensors, and GPS. This includes the collection of various sensor data, also sensor fusion data, putting it into context, and this already leads to first business models, also driven today by its real-time character. One example for that being navigation services. The second one is the data matching. Here we already go the road of contextualizing and matching data and information by means of a digital tool or even multi-sided platform. Meaning here, one provider offers a service to a pool of users, which allows for more advanced and even scalable business models, making use of networks effects. Classical example here can be seen as car sharing service. The last one, and also the most complex one, is the as-a-service business model, the highest additional value processing level, which comprise mainly of outcome-based as-a-service models, such as, for example, functions as a service, which means providing temporary outcome-orientated car features that, for example, can be activated on demand and paid by consumption. When by outcome-oriented, we mean they only arrive when they are really needed, as there is a forecast algorithm which already forecasts based on fusion of different input data on different levels when what kind of service could be needed and then be offered. As I said in the beginning, this can be explained even further and drilled down for full 20 minutes, and we can add different complexity. Live versus historic data, personal versus non-personal data. The whole data privacy perspective is interesting here. Generally, the more data levels included and the higher the aggregation and contextualization, the more valuable the resulting service and the more value add can be created. It will be very different now to see how data is marketed on platforms in order to derive the actual value for different kinds of data sets. Which data set has what kind of value to the users creating the services, which in the end links on the monetization potential. Live data, historical data, be personal data, be passenger data. So very interesting field for further innovation ongoing. In the next step, and as the last value chain step, we look at the use cases and services. Services offering based on vehicle data are the last step from the car data monetization value chain. Based on different types of generated data, there are different emerging connected vehicle service use cases. We differentiate here between, on the one hand, B2B, B2C use cases versus intelligent transportation systems, ITS, which basically means advanced application of connected vehicles, including the integrations of ecosystem as well as of swarm data. The ITS data are basically aiming to provide services relating to different modes of transport and traffic management, and are ultimately leading to the development of smart transport networks and smart cities. For now, let's focus more on the B2B, B2C use cases, where we see vehicle infotainment and fleet management being by far the largest segments when it comes to segment volume, which is a 2018 value from IDC. Also, vehicle infotainment has a very, very strong growth rate, and with a compound annual growth rate of 25% 2018 to 2022. So it's estimated and forecasted to remain one of the leading connected vehicle service segments in the future, in the near-term future. But the real stunner here from our perspective is the forecasted growth, and thereby also meaning the relevance of vehicle security service. With a CAGR of 47%, this segment is forecasted to be worth over €100 billion by 2022. So the increasing number of different types of data, which we discussed in the beginning, and the different levels of data, with data also being personal, some allowing profiling of users, data security becomes a top priority, which is why all parties handling data among the value chain have to heavily invest in having a secure by design system architecture in order to prevent any type of data breaches. When we had a look then, we had a look at the customer preferences, and here we are talking about B2C end customer preferences regarding payment models for connected vehicle services. The results here are from a recently published NTT data study and are based on a survey with over 3,000 drivers in Germany, Spain, Italy, and the UK. And it can be stated that B2C end users, when it comes to payment of connected vehicle services, are still rather conservative. This can be seen on two main things. The most preferred option is still a one-time payment with car purchase. 45% of the respondents said this would be their preferred option of payment for connected vehicle services, followed by ad-based payment at 21%. Meaning the most attractive one from an operator point of view, ongoing subscription type of payment, or at least pay-as-you-use model payment, have only been preferred by 9%, respectively 7% of the consumers. Additionally, 21% of users said they are not interested in paying for an additional fee, be it by ad viewing or paying for connected vehicle services. There are different reasons for that. For example, that premium brand vehicle purchasers in generally prefer to pay all costs upfront at once instead of having regular on-top costs. But the most relevant of all is consumers are still skeptic, and this is for them still a low maturity mark, and they also have to be educated and get warm with the idea here to have an additional payment stream for additional services. The reason they are skeptic also belongs to the fact that they do not see from some of the solutions already on the market the value add, and therefore are not willing to have to pay here on a, for example, monthly, weekly, or bi-weekly basis. This is now the shop where it is on service providers, their partnership ecosystem among the value chain, and their value add based on data aggregation, combination analysis, and contextualization to convince end consumers that their service provider real added value worth paying for. Because from operator perspective, the more attractive payment method are obviously subscription and pay-as-you-use models. I think we proved that there is a big opportunity from market perspective and for specific use case specific perspective. I'm really looking forward as this whole team to get some more context from relevant market players among the different value chain steps we just pointed out. And I hope that what we and my team were able to provide you with some interesting and meaningful insights regarding the value creation from connected vehicle data and the business model types. Me and my colleague, Ms. Marinova, who was really strongly involved in the creation of that presentation, thank you on that point as well, are looking forward to discuss any questions you might have in a separate Q&A session. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the exchange and also to hear from the following speakers. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Marcel, for your presentation.